Live with CDP Sports Talk, a weekly sports and entertainment podcast sponsored by Barry Cullen Chevrolet. Live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, and LinkedIn. And on audio via Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Spotify, Anchor FM, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Radio Public, and TuneIn. Now, here's your host, Chris Palme.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Season 8, Episode 11, overall 396 of Live with CDP Sports Talk, sponsored by Barry Cullen Chevrolet Dealership at 905 Woodlawn Road West in the Guelph Auto Mall. Check out barrycullen.com for the newest selection of new and pre-owned GM vehicles, or give the dealership a call at 519-824-0210. Tell them Chris Palme sent you, and you can also email the dealership at info@barrycullen.com. Live with CDP Sports Talk is on weeknights from 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern on radio station WQEE 99.1 FM in Noonan, Georgia, the home of Southern Talk and Sports. And a special shout out to Ryan O'Neill, the station manager of WQEE 99.1 FM. And you'll have to check out our radio station later tonight when I'm on at 8 o'clock right now. I hope everyone's doing well on this, Monday, May 6th already, 2024. I got back home late last night from Buffalo. I did some freelance media work for the Buffalo Bandits, who defeated the Toronto Rock 10-8 to advance to the NL Finals. I'm looking forward to my guest today. This is her first appearance on Live with CDP Sports Talk, and her name is Tracy Hamilton. She is a stand-up comedian out of the Toronto area, and we're going to bring her on and talk a little the comedy industry with Tracy. Good afternoon, Tracy. How you doing?
Hi, Chris. I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. And how was your weekend?
It was good. Yeah. The weather's finally starting to improve in Toronto, so it's nice to not just see bare trees anymore. It's nice to look out the window and actually see green.
And a lot of rain, too, we've had
A lot of rain.
month. Every time I get my car washed, within hours it rains. So I always tell people when it rains, you can blame me.
Yeah.
Don't worry, I try to be funny at times. But hey, one thing I wanted to ask you first before we get into some questions is I'm a big dog person and I volunteer at a local humane society. It says you have a cute dog, so you can tell us a little bit about your dog?
Yeah, I absolutely do have a very cute dog. She's actually sleeping behind me right now. Her name is Evie. She is a Pomeranian, and she is an old lady at this point. She's 15 years old now.
Wow.
Which I can't even believe time just really flies. I've had her since she was 8 weeks old. So she's been my sidekick for like my whole adult life, basically. But she's the best dog in the entire world. She's now blind in one eye and, has kind of an old lady walk, but she's the happiest dog in the whole world and so friendly, loves all people so much, just the best personality. Love her to death.
I just started volunteering at a Cambridge Humane Society again, walking dogs again, because I lost my dog 5 years ago to cancer at the age of 15. His name was Riley. His name was Riley, and he was a Corgi Shepherd. But losing a pet, dog, cat, whatever, that has been with you for years and years is like losing your best friend. And that's the hard part.
Yeah, it's devastating. I'm really trying to savor every moment that I have with Evie right now, because I'm very acutely aware all the time of how old she is at this point, and so I'm just trying to make every day count as much as I can. But that's great that you're doing that volunteering. I have friends who have done that work before and really loved it.
Yeah, there's a couple dogs that have been down there for over 100 days, and obviously when they get adopted, I'm going to be so happy for them. But I'm kind of getting attached to them because I see them twice a week, and they're always so happy to go out for a walk, and just walking a dog makes you feel so much better.
Absolutely. Yeah, it is a huge mood boosting properties. No better antidepressant than a dog.
Absolutely. I was also reading on your bio, Tracy, you have a stand-up comedy album being released on June 14th. Can you tell my audience a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is my debut stand-up album. So I've been doing stand-up for 9 years now. So this is sort of a combination of my favorite jokes from past years and then the things that I've been working on in the last couple of years that have meant a lot to me. It's a really personal album. That seems to be sort of the direction that my comedy is taking right now, but it's called Human Person. And I recorded with Howl and Roar Records, which is a record label here in Toronto. And it'll be out June 14th on all platforms that you get any music or albums of any kind. So whatever way you want to access it, you can access it on Apple Music or Spotify or whatever you like.
How long did it take to create an album, and how difficult was it to pick out your best jokes?
I would say it's similar to with music where they say you've got your whole life to write your first album and 2 years to write your second. That's kind of how it's been for this. So I took time off over the pandemic because obviously there weren't any live shows really happening. So I had those 2 years away from my material, not really performing. And then when I came uh, back on stage after the pandemic, I really wanted to make something permanent that would exist in the world. Basically, evidence that I was here is what I wanted. So I looked through all of the jokes that I had before the pandemic, picked out all of my favorite ones. So those ones that spans over, the 9 years, but and then I wrote a lot of new material from the when I came back after the pandemic to when the album was released. Some of the jokes on the album, most comedians would argue, were maybe too new to to put on an album. It was a bit of a daring choice. Usually, you want to work on material for, I would say, at least a year before you feel like it's really ready for things. But yeah, it's sort of a compilation of material from the last couple of years and my favorite material from the 7 years before that. But I'm really proud of how it came together. It was also just the most fun that I have ever had on stage recording at those shows. We did 2 shows at Comedy Bar here in Toronto, which is my comedy home. It's where I worked out most of that material. I do so many shows there. It's like my comedy home. So it was really great to get to record it in a space that is so meaningful to me. And yeah, just a fantastic time. We had a bit of a technical difficulty at the recording show, which I have actually included as a bonus track on the album. I was on stage for about 5 minutes before we realized that my microphone had been cutting in and out the whole time, which I don't know if
A hot mic.
it was not the best, especially when you're trying to record the sound from the show. So the first 5 minutes, we had a little bit of a time figuring out the technical difficulties, but it ended up kind of breaking the ice and becoming funny in itself. So I've included that as a little bonus track. So if you want to experience the live technical difficulties with me, you can find that at the end of the album.
Definitely, I will check it out. What kind of comedy style do you have?
It's always very difficult to describe your own comedy. So I kind of go with what I'm given from other people. I would describe it sort of as like personal storytelling. I talk a lot about myself and my life and my experiences. Um, I really love all styles of comedy, and there are people who do styles that are very different from me who I absolutely love. I love watching comedians that do one-liners. I love observational comedy, but the direction that my comedy seems to be taking is more of yeah, personal storytelling, which has been an interesting evolution as well because the more personal it gets, the scarier it gets to perform. Stand-up is always obviously any kind of public speaking is very scary, and I still get nerves before I go on stage even this many years into it, but it's definitely taken on a new flavor now that I'm really revealing a lot of myself and, and my own life on stage. It's gotten vulnerable in a different way than it was before.
I was watching some of your videos off your YouTube channel, by the way. And here's a plug. Where can people find you on YouTube to subscribe to your channel?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Tracy Hamilton Comedy on YouTube, and I'm at Hamiltrace on all platforms.
Okay, and I was checking out a couple of your videos, one about therapists and one about small talk. Just quick thoughts on those two videos.
Yeah, absolutely. The therapist one was actually so fun. So I was doing a show, and another comedian had been talking to the crowd a little bit, doing a little bit of crowd work with these ladies who were at a table in the front. And classic, like, oh, what do you do for a living? And they said, oh, we're therapists, and it was like a whole table of therapists. And then later on in the show, I have a bit about how I'm really bad at small talk because I just go way too personal immediately. I don't have any interest in asking you generic, basic, surface level questions about yourself. I just want to get right to the meaty stuff right away, which is maybe a little bit too invasive for small talk, especially with somebody that you don't know very well. And I was just asking the crowd, like, does anybody relate to that? Is anybody else that way? And this table of ladies were like, yes, yes, definitely, raising their hands and clapping. And I clued in, oh, wait a second, are you the therapist? So like that makes perfect sense. You monetized it. Like you just made it into a career being bad at small talk. You just cut right to the bone right away. That's good. You're making money off of it. But yeah, unfortunately, I'm a comedian where when I talk to the crowd, I'm just supposed to ask, oh, are you two a couple? Oh, what do you do for a living? Yeah, it doesn't work so well in that context.
How hard was it in those 2 years with the pandemic and for obviously being in the comedy industry and not being able to perform in front of a live audience? Were you able to do some live stream shows in those 2 years then?
So I did a couple of Zoom shows, but I found that it was a really different experience. For one thing, the whole audience is on mute. So for me, and for most comedians, when we're working on material and trying to build our act, we're really relying on your feedback as the audience for you to tell us, what do you think of this? Is this working? What do I need to change? And we take your reaction into account when we're changing things and rewriting and recrafting our jokes. So without being able to hear the audience, you're really left without feedback. It felt kind of like I was just performing to a wall or just talking to myself in my own house. So I did a couple of shows on Zoom, but they weren't quite the same. So I mostly took the time to step away from stand up for a minute, um, do a little bit of writing and things like that on my own. But I really waited until the pandemic was over and I could do those live shows again to really get back to it. But I did actually find that that break really helped my comedy. I think having the time away from my material let me come back to it with fresh eyes, and looking over the jokes that I've been telling before. You get kind of stuck in telling it one way, and it's difficult to make changes. And taking the 2 years away and then coming back to that material and looking at it again, I had all these new ideas for these jokes that I'd been telling forever, and realizing, oh, I thought that the premise of this was actually this thing, but really it's this. So that means that the punchline would be this, and kind of restructuring all of my jokes and finishing jokes that didn't feel finished before, which was really satisfying. And you'll see some of that on the album as well, jokes that I was able to kind of reshape and rewrite after the pandemic in a way that was really satisfying.
Wanted to ask you this, Tracy. If somebody's watching this live stream or on audio or on my radio station, cheap plug here, WQEE 99.1 FM, they're interested in getting in the comedy industry. Do you think they should learn how to write their material first before they perform?
Yes, definitely. I think that anybody who's going into stand up or has a desire to try it, it's probably because you're funny and probably because other people have told you that you're funny. But there is something really different about being funny with your friends versus being funny in a stand up context. And the difference there really is the writing and the structure. And I find, even regardless of how confident you are, the first time that you get on stage to do stand up, you're going to be incredibly nervous. And the more structure you can give yourself so that you feel like you have a safety net, you know what you're there to say, the better you're going to do. I really encourage people to take classes, because any comedy theater, for the most part, will offer stand up comedy classes. And I think those are really valuable because, for one thing, you get peers through that class. You have other people who you're collaborating with, the other people in your class. It gives you people to, get up the courage to, okay, let's all go out to an open mic together and try this together. And you get kind of a team and friendships through that way. But also you'll have a pro comedian teaching the class, and they'll be giving you feedback on the material that you're writing. You'll typically leave that class with at least a 5-minute set of material, and you'll often have a grad show at the end of that class, which I think is the absolute best first show that you could ask for, because the audience for that show will be all people who are there to support somebody that they know and love that's in the class. It's a really soft landing. You'll have a great set. It won't be scary. I've never seen anybody bomb on one of those grad shows. It's always a good time. So I would really encourage people, if you're looking to try stand up, if it's like a bucket list thing for you, or if you are really desiring to kind of try to pursue this in a real way as a career, I would definitely say start with a comedy class. It'll be a good intro into it, and then you can take it from there.
What are some of the best comedy classes to take for doing writing and as writing your jokes too, Tracy? Do they just come to you just like that instantly, or sometimes it just takes a little time?
So to start for the comedy classes, if you're here in Toronto, Second City offers stand-up classes. Comedy Bar also offers stand-up classes, but whatever city you're in, whatever comedy theater, they probably offer stand-up classes. If you're lucky enough to be somewhere with the Second City, then they definitely do. But most comedy theaters will offer some kind of stand-up class. So really encourage you to check that out. As far as how material comes up, some people can write this way. This has not been the way that I do it. Some people can write where they just sit down and go, okay, I want to write a joke about my family. And then they just sit down and they write a joke about their family. That is not how it has ever worked for me. The way that I think of it is you have to I think of it like installing a software. So you've installed this comedy stand-up software in the back of your brain, and that's filtering your life at all times. So while you're living your life, you're kind of quietly in the background looking at everything as, is this material? Is this material? Is this material? Whether you're really conscious of it or not. And when I have the alert go off of this might be material, I have a note app in my phone, and I just write a note for myself with as much detail as I can of here's what my idea is. And then later, when I have time to actually sit down and write in a more purposeful way at my desk, I'll look through that app in my phone, see what I'm inspired to expand from the little notes that I've written. I'll take one of those, and then I'll just kind of write a bunch of little point form notes of what is everything that I can think of within this topic that I've identified as being potential material.
What's the biggest crowd that you've performed in your career so far, and how long does it take? I've asked Mary Kennedy and some other community this. When you're doing a live performance, how long does it take for you to engage or get a sense of what the audience's mood's like?
Oh, that's a really good question. The largest audience that I've performed for, I think, would be, to be honest, I'm not sure what the capacity of that theater was. Maybe 12 to 1,500. Um, I've done a couple of theater shows. The largest crowd, I think, would be when I did the Debaters in Ottawa. And as far as how long it takes to get a gauge on the audience, it varies, but usually I'd say almost immediately. I can with relative accuracy gauge how an audience is going to be just by the moment where you come in and go, "Hey, how's everybody doing tonight?" and their response there. That gives me at least a baseline, and sometimes is very, very telling of how an audience is going to be, whether I'm going to have to kind of work for it a little bit and get their energy up, or if they're just completely ready to go. So so ready, and what we describe as a hot crowd already from the beginning. But I would say definitely I get a gauge pretty quickly based on the opening joke, especially depending on what kind of joke I'm telling. Right? Like if you're a comedian who does really dirty material and you do a dirty joke off the top, you're going to get a sense really quickly of whether or not this audience is going to be into the kind of material that you're going to be serving. Or if you do a joke that's really silly and absurd off the top, then get a gauge of whether or not the audience is going to be down to do something weird with you through the set. But yeah, it's pretty quick you get a sense of the audience. But I've also had many sets where we go on a real journey and the audience starts kind of one way and ends up another way by the end of the set, for sure.
Would you say the opening joke would be probably the most important one to start off on a good note?
Definitely. I think there's something about gaining the audience's trust really quickly that's why the first laugh is so important, because you really need we've all had the experience of watching comedy and being kind of tense in the audience, being like, oh, I really hope that this is okay, that that they do well. Like, the audience is rooting for you. You have to remember that as a performer, that the the audience's best case scenario is that you're really good at comedy. So nobody's rooting against you. Nobody is wanting you to not do well or not be funny. But the quicker you can get them to laugh, the quicker the audience can relax and know that they're in good hands with you. They can trust that you're driving the ship and you're going to take them with confidence. So I think that that's the reason why the first joke is so important. I would say, in terms of like structuring a set, you would want your second funniest joke to go first, your first funniest joke to go last, and then whatever you consider to be the weakest material to go in the middle.
On average, how long is one of your shows?
It really depends. I would say, if for local shows here in Toronto, it tends to be between 8 to 15-minute sets, because usually it's a mixed bill show. So you'll have a number of different comedians all doing sets of the same length on one show. If you're doing a club show, like at Absolute or other comedy clubs here in Toronto or otherwise, then you would typically have a host, a middle act, and a headliner. The host would do anywhere between 15 to 20 minutes usually. The middle act would be 20 to 30 minutes, and then you'd have the headliner doing 45. So it really depends on what kind of show you're doing. I would say I do most of the comedy that I do is here locally in the city. I'm doing usually 3 to 5 shows a week within Toronto, and most of those sets are 8 to 15 minutes. If I'm going out of town for other shows in the area, then anywhere between 15 to 30 minutes, depending.
As a comedian, do you prefer to be the opening act, or you kind of would like to do the middle or at the end? How do you like to do that as a
That's a
comedian?
good question. I think it really depends. It depends on my mood, and it depends on how I'm feeling about comedy in general at the time. I would say I find hosting to be very stressful. And as the host, you're always obviously the first act, because you're introducing the show and then you're kind of emceeing through. So you'll be going up in between each of the comedians. And I host a lot. I think I am a good fit for hosting because I'm pretty high energy. I'm very positive and and smiley. Like, I think that I set a good tone for a show. But I find hosting to be very stressful, not only because you have to go first, but also because you have to be on the whole time. You don't get the luxury of going up and doing your set and then being able to, like sigh of relief, leave the stage and just enjoy the rest of the show. You have to be tuned in the whole time, listening to what the other comedians are saying in case there's anything that you would need to comment on, or you've got to be paying attention the whole time. So I think that's what I find to be the most stressful spot. I think definitely middle spots are the cushiest, for sure, because you don't have the responsibility of really taking it home as the headliner, and you don't have the pressure of going first to a cold crowd that hasn't been warmed up yet. It's a really cushy spot. So yeah, those middle spots are really fun.
Do you have any rituals before a performance to help you focus or relax?
A little bit, a little bit. I am definitely a creature of habit, and I really like a routine. So I do tend to kind of do things sort of the same way before a show. You always before a show, I'll go into my notebook and I'll write a little bit about, I'm doing this show tonight. Sets are this long. Here's how I'm feeling right now. Anything notable about this show? I'll just write a little bit about the context of what the show's going to be. Then I'll go in and I'll figure out what I want to do for my set. So I'll figure out what jokes I want to do and what order I want to put them in. And then I have a ritual after the show as well with the notebook, where I go back to my notebook after the show and I write how long that set ran, and how it went, if there's anything that I learned from that show or anything that stood out to me about certain jokes, if there's anything that I should change, anything like that. I really value a little bit of alone time before a show to get myself kind of in the right headspace. And I try to always be pretty early. Not all comedians are like this. I know a lot of comedians who want to get there the very last minute because they do not want to spend any more time getting nervous or anything before they go up. But I like to be at every venue like half an hour early, which is very early for comedians.
How important is it to have a strong support system? And before you go on a live performance, do you test out your jokes to family and friends?
So I have made a point of not testing out my jokes to family and friends before I bring them on stage. I will often get material from conversations with family and friends. You're always the funniest when you're with the people that you're the closest with, right? Because you're the most comfortable, you can be the most yourself. And that's really what I'm trying to do on stage, is be as authentically my genuine self as possible. So I do get a lot of material out of conversations with family and friends, but I don't usually bring material to my family and friends and try it out with them first. At this point, I try to trust my instincts as a comedian enough to know whether or not there's something genuinely there. And then really, I just want to show it to strangers and see what they think about it. And sorry, what was the first half of your question? I forgot.
The strong support system.
Definitely. I think that's really, really important. And I think that, this is relatable, I think, to anyone in any career, is that you spend so much time at work that a lot of the people in your life end up being the people at work. And that's true of comedy as well. We tend to end up with 90% of our friends are comedians, which I think that the healthiest thing is to have a balance, to have strong friendships within comedy and then to have strong friendships with people who are not in the industry at all, because both will serve different purposes. As comedians, we kind of cycle through different emotional highs and lows, and the way that we feel about our comedy and comedy in general, and the amount of hope or desperation that we feel at any time, those fluctuate quite a lot. And I think you need comedian friends to remind you that that's normal. Friends that you can go to and go, oh, I'm just feeling like maybe I've said the last funny thing I'm ever going to say, and I'm never going to have a good idea again, and all of the best is behind me. And you have comedian friends who can tell you, I felt like that last week, and then I had a good set over here, and now I feel fine, and the same thing will happen for you. That's really important. But you also need people who are a good support system for you outside of comedy, because those are the people who will celebrate with you the most when you achieve things, and when you get a really good opportunity or move up a level in your career. It's your like regular non-comedian friends who are going to be the most excited with you, because they don't have the underlying in the background level of why didn't I get that, or like the competitive thing. They're not going to feel like they're missing out on anything. They'll just be genuinely happy for you. So I really think that you need a strong support system in comedy and outside comedy.
I asked Mary Kennedy this too last July. How much burnout can there be in the comedy industry?
Oh, tons, especially because this is such a free form industry, right? It's not a linear career where this is your set schedule. You go to work this many days a week. You work this hour to this hour. And, this is the hierarchy where you start at this position and then you get promoted to this position and this position. There isn't structure like that within comedy. It's really free form. And so it's really easy to put a lot of pressure on yourself to be working all the time, to be out at shows every single night, and to be spending all of your free time writing, and to really just try and work every second that you can. It's very, very easy to overwork yourself and to burn out that way. And I think that it's really important for for comedy, but really for any artist to also be living a life that isn't your career. Especially with comedy, like our job is to talk about our lives. And so if you're not living a life, then what are you going to talk about? You're going to run out of ideas so quickly because you're only at comedy shows. You aren't having other experiences and coming up with other ideas from just living a life like a normal person. So I think it's really important for anybody, but also for comedians to remember that rest is productive, that is still in service of whatever it is that you want to accomplish. Rest is equally important.
Have you ever had to ad-lib a joke because you just I know with me, sometimes my memory, if I don't write stuff down, I forget. Has that ever happened to you in any of your shows where you just
Oh, definitely.
forgot a joke or you had to kind of ad-lib on the spot?
For sure. And I think those moments happen for a number of reasons. Like maybe it's that you've completely forgot where you're going in this joke. Maybe it's a joke that you haven't told in a really long time and you're trying to bring it out again and you're halfway through it and you realize, oh, I don't remember how the rest of this joke goes. Or maybe it's a brand new joke that you haven't fully memorized how you do it yet, and you just kind of have to play around that way. Or sometimes something happens in the moment that's just so distracting that you get totally off the rails, like, somebody calls something out in the crowd or a glass breaks or who knows what's going to happen at a live comedy show. So yeah, all the time, definitely. And sometimes you get really good ideas from things like that, like from where you end up kind of taking that moment. Maybe sometimes you'll get a little spark of inspiration for something that you should add into that joke.
Do you ever, when you I'm a sports fan, when you're at a performance, do you ever see somebody in a Maple Leafs jersey or a sports jersey and you just to lighten up the mood, say a comment or anything like that?
I think the funny thing is that I feel like comedy and sports compete a lot in terms of live performance. As comedians, when the local team is doing well and they have a game on that night, you're like, oh, nobody's going to be at the show today because sports will always win over comedy, unfortunately. So if somebody has the option of staying home and watching an important game or going up to see a live comedy show, they're going to choose sports every time. But yeah, definitely. I would say the standout is if you see somebody who's wearing a controversial controversial team's jersey or a hat or something like that, something that is showing that they are not loyal to the local team, or it might just be an indicator to you that you've got somebody from out of town. If they're wearing, a sports team from the other side of the country or something, then you might spark up a conversation with that person and ask them a little bit because you figure they're probably not local, and that's a good place to start for crowd work.
Me being a sports fan and being a radio host and doing media, when I'm in other cities doing my media work, I always approach people with jerseys on and make small talk. And people just open right up when they wear their sports team's jerseys, and they don't care about your background or anything. They just want to talk to you about what their teams they love.
Definitely. I think I love that sense of community within sports. As somebody who does not know a lot about sports and has always kind of been on the outside of that, I'm very envious of that. And I really admire that about sports and about sports fans is the amount of camaraderie and like unity and coming together as a group. I love anything that comes with a real sense of community.
Before we get into your video that you sent me, we're going to play. How competitive is the comedy industry in 2024?
I would say very competitive, especially here in Canada, because it's very different than somewhere like the US or the UK, where there's a star system and there's endless opportunity and you could get discovered and all of those things. It's very different in Canada. Unfortunately, we just don't really invest a lot into our local talent. So there's a small pool of opportunities and there's a ton of incredibly talented comedians in this country all competing for the same very limited pool of opportunities. I describe it as like the ceiling for how high you can go in comedy in Canada is very low, which is why we see so many Canadian comedians move to the US and to England. That happens quite a lot. Unfortunately, we lose a lot of talent. I think it is getting better. I think it is slowly improving. But yeah, I think that it is very, very competitive for that reason. But it also makes the comedians in Canada so much stronger because we all have to be really good to get anywhere. So I really encourage people to go out to live comedy shows in your city and support live comedy because that is so important. And there is so much talent out there. Really incredible.
Absolutely. I was born in 1972. I know I'm an old guy, but I grew up in the 70s with a comedy show called SCTV. Did you ever hear of it or ever see any
Absolutely.
of it?
Oh, of
Absolutely.
course. Absolutely. Yes. I absolutely loved SCTV and yeah, I a huge admirer, huge admirer.
Absolutely. Eugene Levy, John Candy, or John Candy, who's been gone for 30 years. Joe Flaherty just passed away recently.
Yeah.
Andrea Martin. Canada is known for hockey and beer and lacrosse, but I think we're also known for comedies because we've had a lot of good comedies, male and female, over the years.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I think we have exported so many fantastic comedians. That's yeah, our national exports are maple syrup and comedians.
Absolutely. And to me, SCTV was our version of Saturday Night Live.
Definitely. And for anybody who loves sketch comedy and is interested in watching Canadian sketch comedy, this hour has 22 minutes. Would be our current sort of equivalent to Saturday Night Live. And the writing team and the on-screen team, but the writing team for This Hour Has 22 Minutes right now is unbelievably strong. I have so many friends who are in the writers' room for that show who are the funniest people that I know, and that show is really just incredible. If you haven't watched it in years, you have to go back to it. It's yeah, I'm so in admiration of what they've done with that show, especially in the last couple of years.
And just quick thoughts on Saturday Night Live. Do you feel it still as good as it used to be, or do you feel at some point that might be done with it?
So what my thought is I feel like at every point, at every year in my entire life, this debate has never ended. I feel like we are always looking at what is it like now and was it better before, and we're always feeling that way in every era of Saturday Night Live. I think that it's just the way that that show is made is so unbelievably challenging to create an entire show in a week and have it come to air. I think just the nature of that show is that certain sketches are going to really hit and live on and be incredible, and some are just going to sort of disappear by the next week. You've forgotten them. But I think that there's still definitely those gem ones that come out every once in a while. Like that Beavis and Butthead one from a couple of weeks ago was so funny. That really got me. So I think there's yeah, it definitely still has some life in it, but yeah, it's just such a unique way of making television.
One thing too, I wanted to ask you, Tracy. Obviously, our society is being more politically correct. How much of that has impacted the comedy industry, and how has the comedy industry have to revolve or it change with that with the times as well?
Definitely. I think that my opinion is I think regardless of how, what things are like at the moment, you can genuinely talk about literally anything in comedy. There is no subject that is off limits. You can talk about anything you want, and that has not changed. The only thing that's maybe changed is that now you have to be a better writer to do that successfully. You can talk about any subject, you just have to write it carefully, and you have to even if your joke is going to be something that people might find offensive, you have to make the joke funnier than it is offensive. That
Okay.
should just be the baseline. So I think if you're a comedian and you're really finding that that's really impacting you, this PC culture, and nobody's laughing at my jokes anymore, then I think that you aren't writing good enough jokes. That's that's my opinion. It's like, I think there are so many fantastic comedians who tackle extremely controversial subjects, and they just do it with enough careful writing that they do it successfully. Like Anthony Jeselnik has talked about this a lot. I don't know if you are a fan of his, but the themes within his comedy are on surface deplorable, right? Like a very, very offensive or like very controversial topics. But he's just such a talented writer that he's able to write them in a way that you can't be offended. I think if your goal is to write that sort of style of comedy, then I think what would be satisfying about that is when you make people laugh in spite of themselves, right? When you get somebody to laugh about something that maybe they don't totally agree with, but you're able to do it in a certain way where you get them on board anyway. It's the, like, art is getting away with it. If you can write something that is good enough that you can really, really get as close to the line as possible without quite going over it, I think that's where the art is. So yeah, I don't think, like, I don't know, I know Jerry Seinfeld was just this week was talking about how he doesn't think Seinfeld could be made, and meanwhile, It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia has been running for 16 seasons. So I think really it is just that you need to be really funny now. So I have no problem with that. I have no problem with the bar for comedy being a little bit higher. I don't have any problem with that.
I'm a fan of slapstick comedy as well.
Definitely. Physical comedy never dies, and that never goes out of style, right? Something that that's why, and it also has like a universal appeal. That's why Mr. Bean was popular in every country, because it's universal. It doesn't rely on you understanding the same language, and the same subtleties within language, which can get lost in translation. It's just universal. It's something that we can all share.
Absolutely. What are some of the hardest forms of comedy to perform or do?
That's a really good question. I don't know if I could really rank it like that. I think that it just every comedian that I see is so different from the last, and everybody has their own individual style. I think that maybe what's the most challenging is when you have a certain style of comedian in a totally absurd context for that comedian to be performing. When you have a really opposite audience from what that comedian's intended audience is, but that can be applicable to literally any style of comedian. So you could have, a really R-rated, dirty comedian performing a corporate gig for an office at their lunch hour, and that's going to be a really, really challenging combination. Or you could have, a really clean comedian performing for a bachelorette party, and then that's going to be very challenging in itself. So I think it's more when you encounter an audience that isn't necessarily your audience.
All right, Tracy, if you're still okay for time, is it okay if I play a clip from your YouTube channel? And I believe it's called Anxiety.
Yep, absolutely.
Thank you so much for sharing this. And everybody, please remember to subscribe to Tracy Hamilton's YouTube channel like I did. And we're going to play this right now. The clip is called Anxiety is a Great Employee. Tracy, just let me know if you can hear the audio okay.
Great. Yep.
I have anxiety. Any anxious people here tonight? Yeah, not bad. These guys, too anxious to clap. That's okay. I know how it is, guys. It's all right. Yeah, I've been trying to change my perspective on my anxiety a little bit lately. I'm a pretty positive person in general. Maybe you could tell that by my resting customer service face. How can I help you? Smile just won't go away. But I've been trying to apply some of that positivity to my anxiety. Because when you think about it, like, anxiety is not trying to be a bully. It's trying to have your back. right? Trying to keep you safe, save you from embarrassment. You know, he's on your team. So the way that I'm choosing to look at it is I am an employer. Okay, I run a business. And anxiety is just somebody who works for this business. And this is working, because let me tell you, from this perspective, anxiety, fabulous employee. This guy's got literally every skill you could want in somebody who works for you. Perfect attendance. He shows up every day. Even if he's not scheduled, he's just like, I didn't have anything to do today, guys. I'll be here if you need me. Not only that, he works overtime. All right, sometimes this guy's in the office till like 2, 3 in the morning. Anxiety's no quiet quitter, okay? He's burning the midnight oil. What an employable gentleman, don't you think? Also, great attention to detail. Right? Flawless. This guy does not miss a thing. I'll just ask him something simple like, hey, do you think this milk's still okay? It smells kind of, but is this okay? And he'll give me like a 20-page report on the dangers of botulism. And you can't even get that from milk, guys. He's so thorough. He also shows initiative. You know, this guy's out here doing work that has not even been assigned to him. I'll just be in my office, minding my own business. He'll bust down the door like, hey, boss. That's how he talks. I don't know why. Hey, boss. I've been thinking about that time that you went in for a hug with Janet. And she gave you kind of a confused look as she hugged you back. You didn't really know what that meant? Yeah, I've been doing some digging. And I think that you guys weren't at hugging level yet in your friendship. And now she thinks you're weird. And a little handsy. I didn't ask him to tell me that. Correction. I didn't have to ask. That's initiative, guys. Somebody hire this man. He also works great independently. You know, I don't have to supervise him very much. There's no micromanaging needed with anxiety. If I don't have anything for him to do, he will keep busy. He'll be like, no problem, boss. I'll just be in my office digging up embarrassing memories from your love life. I just got to the part where you're on a date and you ask the guy if he prefers animals with fur or without. But I'm plenty to keep it busy.
That clip was courtesy of your YouTube channel, Tracy Hamilton Comedy. Please subscribe like I have. And Tracy, quick thoughts on that little skit there.
Yeah, so that was a bit that I ended up doing later on at the Winnipeg Comedy Festival as well. And that was one of the first jokes that I wrote after the pandemic. I sat down and I wrote a bunch of mental health material. And I love that bit. I love telling that bit. It's so silly and a long extended metaphor, but yeah, I love that joke.
You just said brought up mental health. Comedy is just like music. Listening to certain music can really change your mental health for the day or whatever. Same with comedy as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, I could not agree more.
If you're all right for a couple more minutes, I just got a couple of questions I wanted to ask you.
Yeah, sure.
For my audience here in Ontario, in Guelph, I guess. When did you take an interest in the comedy industry, and who were some of your comedy influences, both female and male, when you were growing up?
Yeah, I have always been obsessed with comedy my whole life since childhood. I think I was I want to say maybe 6 or 7 years old the first time that my sister was watching Whose Line Is It Anyway? And I watched over her shoulder, even though she told me that it wasn't appropriate for my age, and just fell completely in love and was really glued to my television, maybe more than I should have been as a child. But I have always loved comedy. When I was really little, I loved old TV shows. I watched a lot of I Love Lucy and Bewitched. And obviously Lucille Ball and Elizabeth Montgomery are both so funny and so talented. And then when I got a little bit older, it was really like the sitcom boom. I was watching a lot of Third Rock from the Sun, Seinfeld, Mad About You, Frasier, and loved all of those shows. And then I would devour any stand-up that I could find. So here in Canada, at least, it was mostly things like the Just for Laughs galas that were televised stand-up, and I'd find comedians that I really loved from that, and I'd buy their stand-up albums. The early influences stand-up wise that I was devouring would have been Mike Birbiglia, Dimitri Martin, and Mitch Hedberg were my favorites then. And then I have a lengthy list of comedians who I look up to and who inspire me right now. But a short list of favorites would be, I love John Mulaney. I love Pete Holmes, Mae Martin, Catherine Ryan. Mae and Catherine are both actually originally from Canada, even though they've moved on to bigger things since. But yeah, that would be sort of the long and short list of influences. But yeah, I have a very, very lengthy list of comedians that I love, and I'm still obsessed with it even this many years in. But I think I always knew that I'd become a performer in some capacity. I don't think I always knew that it was going to be stand-up, but I did my very first stand-up set my last year of high school. And I didn't really start doing it for real and totally committing to it at that point, but yeah, it's something that I've always loved and I've always wanted to do, and I'm very, very lucky and blessed that I get to do that sometimes for money now, and that I get to make my life around this. It's really incredible.
Any musical ability?
I do sing a bit, and I used to play guitar. Unfortunately I have arthritis in my hand, so it's become pretty difficult for me to play guitar at this point. But I do love to sing, and yeah, I have no aptitude at all for songwriting. I have just whatever part of your brain comes up with original music or tunes is completely broken for me. I have tried so many times to try to write music, and there is just literally nothing there. But I do love singing in the shower.
By the way, a couple of my favorite comedians, obviously Chevy Chase from his SNL days, Adam Sandler, Eddie Murphy. A lot of these guys, males and females, they either came from Saturday Night Live or SCTV.
Definitely, yes. Catherine O'Hara as well. Fantastic, incredible, unreal.
If I'm going to put you on the spot right now, if you had to pick who would be the best, who would be the top male and female comedians out there right now in the industry, in your opinion?
That's so difficult to quantify because it would really depend on what your measuring stick for that is. I think there are some comedians who have found a way to appeal to the widest audience possible. If you look at somebody like Kevin Hart, where everybody knows him, right? Like he's reached what I would consider like the peak level of fame that a comedian can achieve at this point, and sort of like in this generation of comedians. But the thing about comedy is that it is just completely, it's so subjective, and somebody who everybody loves maybe isn't for you, and somebody that nobody seems to love is exactly what you want. And I think that's the beauty of this era of stand-up, where we have comedians who you can find on TikTok and online who don't have any specials yet. You've got Netflix and things where like tons of comedy specials are being produced. A lot of comedians are self-producing specials on YouTube as well, so you can find comedians on there. And I think it's just, you can really find whatever it is that you love right now. And I think that's really the beauty of this era of stand-up that we're in right now,
especially with social media. And
Definitely.
you just mentioned the word TikTok. How we met was through TikTok, and I've had a number of guests off there. And I joined there 4 years ago because I was hesitant. I was like, I'm too old for this. TikTok's for teenage kids. But you know what? I've learned how to promote my show and my guests on TikTok.
Definitely, yes. And I think, yeah, it's really incredible how much we are empowered to make our own things now. That's the beauty of something like TikTok for comedians. And I know that like maybe it's getting banned in the US. I don't know. We'll see. I really hope not,
I
because
agree.
it really is putting more agency in our own hands for us to make our own opportunities. And you can get your name out there and you can find your audience and put out your work on your own terms without being, discovered and somebody else gives you permission to make something. You can just make it yourself. And yeah, it's very empowering that way.
I'm a content creator of radio and media, and you're a content creator of comedy.
Exactly.
And it's just been amazing. And before we wrap this up, I wanted to ask you this as well, Tracy. What was it like performing at the San Francisco Sketchfest, the Old Jane Comedy Festival, the Motor City Comedy Festival, and you even filmed a TV gala at the Winnipeg Comedy Festival? Just tell us a little bit about those.
Those were all great experiences. And I think the best part of festivals is that it gives you an opportunity to meet other comedians from all over. So for me, especially living in Canada, getting to do the American festivals, I'm a dual citizen. I was born in the States, but raised here in Canada. And I'm very lucky for that, because that isn't the case for a lot of Canadian comedians. But doing the American festivals, it was so great to make contacts and meet comedians from all over the country, and know that, if I decide to go on the road and do a tour or drop into another city, that I have friends there now. That was a beautiful thing about those festivals. Performing at the Winnipeg Comedy Festival was like one of the most incredible experiences of my life, getting to do a TV taping. If you want to view that and you're in Canada, you can view that on CBC Gem. I was on the All the Feels Gala. You'll see an edited clip of that anxiety joke, but that was just the most incredible experience of my life.
How important are connections in the comedy industry? Obviously, with the radio media industry, but just how important is connections in your field?
Extremely important. Extremely important. Like as somebody with, I would consider myself to have a pretty high level of social anxiety. It's infuriatingly important to make connections and to network, and especially with other comedians. Like 90% of the opportunities that you get are through other comedians, because they get asked, "Hey, who should I look at, or who should I book for this?" And they put your name out there. Or yeah, it's really important. It's really important. It's I think a relatively fair mix of how good you are and who you know. I think if you know a lot of people but you're not any good at comedy, you're not going to have success. But if you're really good at comedy but you never put yourself out there and shake hands and stuff, then you're never going to get anything either. So I think you really need to be actively working in both of those areas at the same time.
And how important is it to get an agent or a manager, or most stand-up comedians kind of negotiate for themselves?
So it really depends on where you're based. So
Okay.
if you're in the States, then definitely like managers and agents are available and really, really, really helpful. In Canada, unfortunately, there is only a tiny little handful of representation. So most comedians are unrepresented. So for the most part, it's really just up to us to organize everything. Like you're your own manager, you're your own tour agent, you're your own promoter. You do everything yourself. So if you're, organizing a tour or something like that, like it's you picking up the phone to call the clubs and get yourself booked. It's really up to you to drive it yourself. There is a small handful of managers and agents for stand-up and for comedy in Canada, but it's very, very limited. If you're lucky enough to be somebody who gets represented by one of those couple of people who do it, it's very helpful. But there's definitely an opportunity to make your way on your own if you're in Canada as well. And there's a lot of us out here doing it all on our own.
And as we wrap this up, I do this with all my guests, Tracy. What are a few fun facts about Tracy Hamilton, or even one fun fact that your fans and audience might not know about you?
Oh, that's a really difficult question. I think the first thing that comes to mind is that I am so much more socially anxious than I seem. I and I think that that's part of why I like stand up, because it's I really structured time in the spotlight. I'm somebody who, like, as you heard in that in that clip that we shared, I'm a very anxious person, and I'm overthinking everything constantly all the time. So one of the things that I like most about stand up is that it has so much structure. I go up and they go, okay, we have all agreed, everybody in this room has agreed that it's your turn to talk. And you're going to talk now for this amount of time, and we're all going to listen. And so I know exactly what the rules are. I know exactly what the expectations are. I am not worried if I'm talking too much or too little or anything like that. It's my turn. So yeah, I think that would honestly be true of a lot of stand-up comedians as well. That yeah, we are more neurotic than we appear on stage.
For those who are watching that have never seen you perform live, what is one word to describe you as a comedian? Best describe you as a comedian. One word.
Um, one word is really difficult. I'll say cheerful. Cheerful. From reviewers I've gotten, cheerfully sarcastic has been a way that I've been described, or charmingly awkward. I've gotten that a lot as well. And I think that's pretty accurate.
And finally, can you tell my audience about some of your upcoming live shows?
Yeah, so I'm actually going to be in Australia for the next couple of weeks. So if you want to see me locally, you're out of luck for the next little bit. But I list all of my upcoming shows on my website, which is tracyhamilton.net. And I also post about my upcoming shows on my Instagram, which you can find me at hamiltrace. So you can keep an eye on that, and I'll keep you updated with shows locally and otherwise.
And you're on Linktree too, I believe.
Yes, that's right. Yep, and you can find all of that nice and neat in just one place on Linktree.
Are you going to Australia for vacation, or are you actually doing some comedy down there?
We're actually visiting my husband's family. My husband is from Australia, so we're going to spend some time with his family, which I'm really looking forward to.
One of my first guests was a female ventriloquist from Australia.
Oh yeah. Oh, very
Lindy,
cool.
her name's Lindy Jane, and she came on my show, but I had to do my show here at 3 in the morning because Australia, I think, is what, 12, 13 hours ahead
Yeah,
of us.
it's like completely opposite. Yeah, so you got to do some weird hours.
All right. And Tracy, hey, I want to say thank you so much again for giving us over an hour of your time today. I want to wish you continued success, and I look forward to having you back on my show again in the future as a guest again. And hopefully, I'll get to see you perform live around here in Guelph or in the Toronto area.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Chris. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Tracy. Have a great day and enjoy Australia.
Thank you. Take care.
You too. All right, guys, that was season 8, episode 11. Overall 396 of Live with CDP Sports Talk today with my guest, Tracy Hamilton, who is a female stand-up comedian out of the Toronto area. Please check out her website at tracyhamilton.net. And I'm looking forward to having her on back again in the future. And Tracy is also on Instagram, instagram.com, Trace. I've got it right there on the graphics, and also you can check out her Linktree page at Ham Trace as well. And her website again is tracyhamilton.net, and you can check out her YouTube channel. I've already subscribed, Tracy Hamilton Comedy on YouTube as well. So I want to say thank you so much to Tracy Hamilton for coming on live with CDP Sports Talk this afternoon on this Monday, May 6, 2024. And my next live with CDP Sports Talk, sponsored by Barry Cullen Chevrolet dealership here in Guelph at 905 Woodlawn Road West in the Guelph Auto Mall. Is going to be Thursday, May 8th at 6 p.m. with my special guest, Nashville recording artist Lee Newton. She is a friend of mine. She's been on my show a year ago, and Lee's going to talk to us about her latest songs and hits. And I'm looking forward to having Lee Newton, a Nashville recording artist, and a friend of mine again on Live with CDP Sports Talk this Thursday, May 8th at 6 p.m. Eastern as well. And for some of you guys that didn't know, I was in Buffalo yesterday for last night's National Lacrosse League semifinal game 2 between the Toronto Rock and the Buffalo Bandits. And the Buffalo Bandits, trailing 8-4 in the fourth quarter with about 10 minutes left, scored 6 straight goals to beat the Rock 10-8 to eliminate the Rock for the third straight year. And the Bandits are now playing in their fourth consecutive National Lacrosse League championship, which is the best of 3. This time they're taking on the Albany Firewolves, who upset the San Diego Seals. The National Lacrosse League Championship Series, which is only a best of 3, will start Friday, May 17th at Albany. Game 2 will be Saturday, May 18th at the KeyBank Center in downtown Buffalo. And Games 3, if they're the Game 3, would be, I believe, Friday, May 24th at Albany as well. The Firewolves in the regular season went 2-0 against the Bandits, but the Bandits now have, I believe, won 7 straight games in a row. And then the last 5 games, they've held their opposition to under 10 goals. And last night's 3 stars, Matt Vince, Chase Frazier, and from the Toronto Rock, Mark Matthews as well. And that fourth quarter for the Bandits, they just exploded. It was 8-4, and then Chase Frazier scored 3 goals. Nanacote scored, and Josh Byrne scored a couple goals as well. They had almost, I think, just under 17,000 fans there. If you've never been to a game at Banditland at the KeyBank Center in Buffalo, you can get tickets for the NLL Finals Game 2 at bandits.com. And it was great seeing John Gerkler, Steve Bermel, and Dave Buchanan yesterday, who do the radio and TV coverage for the Bandits, along with, for TSN, John Abbott, Pat Gregor, and Brianne Foley, who was filling in for Ashley Docking as well. So Bandits, Firewolves, National Lacrosse League Championship Series starting on Friday, May 17th. The Bandits are trying for their 6th NLL title in their team history since 1992, and they're trying to win back-to-back titles as well. And I am going to finish up my game night story tonight with some player interviews. And if you want to check out some of my social media pages right now, I have pictures, videos, and some post-game interviews with head coach John Tavares, Chase Fraser, and Josh Byrne. Or no, Chase Fraser, John Tavares, and Dane Smith, the Kitchener, Ontario native, as well as an interview with Pat Gregor from TSN. And I managed to do a street interview with a couple of members of Banditland as well. So they're all on TikTok and all on my YouTube channel as well. Chris Pame, live with CDP Sports Talk on YouTube. And I want to say thank you to my 319 subscribers. Finally, guys, we're going to wrap up our show. But as always, Live with CDP Sports Talk is a weekly sports and entertainment talk show hosted by yours truly, Chris Pame. Is on weeknights from 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern on radio station WQEE 99.1 FM, The Key, the home of Southern sports and talk, the heartbeat of Atlanta. Our radio station's website is WQEEFM.radio12345.com, and make sure you check out the Rod Peterson Show daily from 12 to 2 and Live with CDP Sports Talk from 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern as well. Also, guys, I do some volunteering and fundraising for the Cambridge and District Humane Society. You can check them out at 1650 Dunbar Road in Cambridge, Ontario, or you can call them at 519-623-7722, or you can visit their website at cambridgehumanesociety.org. If you're looking for that forever friend and pet, you can check their website out at cambridgehumanesociety.org, and there's dogs such as Clifford, Cleo, Alpine down there who are looking for forever homes and loving families. Awesome dogs, and I love volunteering down there at the Cambridge District Humane Society. And they're also doing a once a month 50-50 draw at the Cambridge District Humane Society. The money goes to all the programs at the shelter, and you can either get your ticket at the Cambridge Humane Society on 1650 Dunbar Road in Cambridge, or give them a call again at 519-623-7722, or visit their website at cambridgehumanesociety.org. You can get 100 tickets for $50, 20 tickets for $20, or you can get 5 tickets for $10. And all proceeds, again, go to all their programs down at the Cambridge District Humane Society as well. Live with CDP Sports Talk is live streamed on these platforms: YouTube, Facebook, Twitter /X, Twitch, LinkedIn, and now available on Instagram. Also, you can check out my website at beacons.ai/Chris D. Palme. My website again, beacons.ai/Chris D. Palme. Live with CDP Sports Talk, again, is sponsored by Barry Cullen Chevrolet Dealership at 905 Woodlawn Road West in the Guelph Auto Mall. You can check out barrycullen.com for the newest selection of new and pre-owned vehicles, or give them a call at 519-824-0210, or email them at info@barrycullen.com. And just to let you guys know, Barry Cullen Chevrolet is the #1 Chevrolet electric dealer in Ontario as well. I am also a content creator on TikTok at Live with CDP. Check me out on TikTok at Live with CDP. All my recent content from last night's Bandits game is on TikTok. And I want to say thank you to my 2,000 and almost 2,200 followers on TikTok there. So at Live with CDP, and hit the full notification. And also, guys, I'm on cameo.com. If you'd like a personalized video from yours truly, CDP, type in Chris Palme on cameo.com, and I'll do my best to give you a very good video request. All proceeds from my Cameo videos will go to my radio and media work as well. StreamYard is the official live stream provider of Live with CDP Sports Talk. If you're into webinars or podcasting such as yours truly, check out StreamYard.com. They have basic free plans, semi-pro plans. I'm on a professional plan for $49 US a month. And if you're a business that does a lot of webinars or live streaming, check out StreamYard.com and contact their sales department for business pricing as well. And I've been with StreamYard now for 3.5 years, and I can tell you StreamYard is the best live stream providing out there for your webinars or podcasting or whatever you like to do on the internet. Live with CDP Sports Talk, the audio version is available on these platforms: iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Google Podcasts, Spotify for podcasters, Apple Podcasts, Breaker, Pocket Casts, Radio Public, Spotify, Castbox, LinkedIn, Pandora, and Tuned In. Finally, you guys can email or text Live with CDP Sports Talk at cpalme19@gmail.com, or you can text the show at 519-820-7188. Any comments, feedback, questions, suggestions would be greatly appreciated as well. And that's about it for today's show with female stand-up comedian Tracy Hamilton. I want to say thank you to Tracy Hamilton for coming on here. And guys, I'm looking forward to my next show, Thursday, May 8th at 6 p.m. with Nashville recording artist Lee Newton. She'll come on and talk about her latest singles and the latest in the news, and the latest news in the world of country music. And she's based out of Nashville, the South Carolina area as well. And that's about it. Again, I want to say thank you to everyone watching this live stream and also on my audio platforms. And I hope everybody has a great Monday night. And I will have my Buffalo Bandits Toronto Rock game night story completed tonight. And I have some more content to create from last night's game in Buffalo as well. And that's about it. Again, thank you to Tracy Hamilton. Thank you to everyone watching on live stream and audio. And thank you to my sponsor, Barry Cullen Chevrolet and WQEE 99.1 FM. Have a great afternoon, everybody. And we'll see you back here on Live with CDP Sports Talk this Thursday at 6 p.m. with my guest, Nashville recording artist Lee Newton.